So much for the dogs. Let's recap our reactions to the main movies on the show, beginning with Whose Life Is It Anyway? With Richard Dreyfuss. Roger found the film entertaining, but thought it failed to deal adequately with its most important issue. I disagree, but only a little. I did find myself drawn to the right to die subject matter. I vote yes, Roger votes no. We both admired Arthur Penn's Four Friends, a poignant and sentimental study of young people coming of age in the 60s. 2 yes votes for that. And we also liked On Golden Pond, Roger a little bit more than I, with Henry Fonda and Katharine Hepburn in A Portrait of Old Age. And we agree again on Chevy Chase in Modern Problems, a dismal comedy that can't make up its mind whether it wants to be social satire or a special effects movie parody. 2 strong no votes for that.
So the yes votes for Four Friends, On Golden Pond, and kind of halfway with Whose Life Is It?
All the way with me on Whose Life. Roger and I agree that Zoot Suit was too visually distracting to work as a movie. The message gets lost in all the music and that narrator. 2 no votes for that one. We disagree on Venom. Roger felt the plot was too confusing. I felt it was entertaining, so a split vote. 2 yes votes, though, for The Border, Jack Nicholson's performance that saves a routine crime drama. We both recommend the film for his performance. And finally, 2 yes votes for Personal Best, starring Mariel Hemingway, a beautifully written film that sees athletic competition as competition with oneself.
So on this show, I'd say the one we agree on the most
Personal
strongly is Personal Best, a real, let's put it this way, an adult film. Some people are going to be very shocked by it.
Except I think that what keeps you going on this picture is that it just seems on the mark. There don't seem to be too many false statements in the film.
And they're not looking for sensationalism in terms of the sexual content.
No.
It's not an exploitation film.
Straightforward.
And we recommend The Border for Nicholson.
And I want to stick up for Venom.
Okay.
Just because The Border is better, as I answered your question earlier, that doesn't mean that Venom's bad.
Well, it doesn't mean Venom's bad according to you.
Right.
Okay, that's all for this week. Gene and I both voted no on Cannery Row, the elaborate new film version of the John Steinbeck classic. We thought Nick Nolte gave a good leading performance, but that the movie was otherwise too romanticized and preposterous to be effective. 2 yes votes, though, for The Boat is Full, a new film about refugees from Nazi Germany up against the heartless efficiency of Switzerland's wartime neutrality. 2 more yes votes for Soldier Girls, the wonderful new documentary that examines the basic training experiences of women in the volunteer U.S. Army. It's playing the country city by city. Look for it in your area. And we split on Making Love, the film about a married man who discovers he's a homosexual. Gene votes yes. He thought the movie was an interesting introduction to the subject. I vote no. I thought the movie was shallow and insipid.
Well, we obviously disagree, and we should talk more about that film maybe on another show.
We both admired Shoot the Moon, the story of the breakup of a marriage, with wonderful performances by Diane Keaton and Albert Finney. It's not a perfect film, but there's a lot of things right with it, so 2 yes votes for that one. But 2 no votes for Night Crossing, the Disney production about an East German family's escape to the West by hot air balloon. We thought it was stale, predictable, and lifeless. We split on Montenegro, the offbeat comedy about Susan Anspach's adventures in the Swedish underworld. I admired its wild, anarchic wit, and I vote yes. Gene thought the anarchy was rather predictable, so he votes no. And another split decision on One from the Heart, Francis Coppola's extravaganza about a night on the town in Las Vegas. I thought Coppola's spectacular production got in the way of the people in the story. Gene acknowledges the same split, but he liked the movie more than I did. He thinks it's worth seeing.
Roger and I agree on Evil Under the Sun, an Agatha Christie whodunit that had us guessing whodunit. We both recommend you see it. We also agree on Union City, a laborious exercise in style. This is a movie that would have been perfectly all right as a half-hour short. Unfortunately, it's at least 3 times too long. 2 no votes for The Amateur, the preposterous would-be thriller about John Savage fighting the CIA, the KGB, and this script. But 2 yes votes for Quest for Fire, the sometimes silly, sometimes thrilling travelogue through the world of 80,000 BC. Now, I have a question for you. We've agreed, not only just agreed on the movies, we agreed on every single weakness and strength of these pictures. Now, why are we suddenly doing this? We've worked together so long that we're identical?
I don't think so. I think we walked into the balcony, sat down, and happened to agree this week on these 4 films.
I find that movies, you know, a lot of people say they love when we disagree and all that. And so there might be a temptation on our part. But I find these movies just speak for themselves. So often, films are so obviously good, so obviously bad. It never surprises me that when we agree so much.
And these 4 films were not necessarily borderline films.
Not at all.
2 big no votes for The Seduction, starring Morgan Fairchild as a woman in danger. We both feel this movie was a sleazy exercise in voyeurism. 2 yes votes, though, for Vernon, Florida, Errol Morris's strange and fascinating portrait of a small-town eccentrics. We also agree on Ticket to Heaven, The riveting, dramatic story of a young man's indoctrination by a religious cult. 2 yes votes on that one. And finally, 2 yes votes for Missing, starring Sissy Spacek and Jack Lemmon in the dramatic tale of a missing American and the alleged cover-up by the U.S. government. We recommend that with some reservations. Both Gene and I vote no on PORKY'S, the comedy about sex-crazed teenagers in Florida. I thought it had some good moments, but it slipped over the line from comedy into grossness. Gene liked it even less. He thought it was a cross between idiocy and bad taste. We sure can't recommend you see it. 2 yes votes, though, for El Salvador, Another Vietnam, the Academy Award-nominated documentary about the struggle for El Salvador. The movie is obviously slanted, but remarkably up-to-date with its frontline reports from the troubled Central American nation. 2 very enthusiastic yes votes for Das Boot, an absolutely brilliant, incredibly suspenseful drama about a German submarine crew during World War II. This is one of the best war movies I've ever seen. We also agree on Deathtrap, the wicked thriller starring Michael Caine, Christopher Reeve, and Diane Cannon. We both vote yes for its blend of trickery and humor. Finally, 2 more yes votes for Richard Pryor, Live on the Sunset Strip, a brilliant concert film in which Pryor populates the stage with wonderfully imagined characters, then delivers a sobering lowdown on his battle with drug addiction. We split on I Oughta Be in Pictures, the Neil Simon comedy with Walter Matthau and Dinah Manoff. I thought the Simon situations and dialogue were completely predictable, but I thought the movie was somewhat redeemed by good performances. Gene liked a few of Mathau's scenes, but thought the rest of the movie was straight from the Neil Simon assembly line of pseudo-emotional trash. 2 no votes for Silent Rage, the Chuck Norris movie about a kung fu expert and a man-made monster. We both thought it was made with economy and skill, but Gene thought it had too much bloodshed. I thought it started well and grew steadily more ridiculous. We split on Victor Victoria, the Blake Edwards sex farce starring Julie Andrews. I thought it was stylish and funny, a lot of fun. Gene disagreed. He found the film to be unfunny and overwrought, only an occasional amusing scene. 2 big yes votes, though, for Cat People, the Paul Schrader movie starring Nastassja Kinski as a young girl possessed by a leopard. We both admired the way the movie combined details of everyday life with elements of myth and magic. We think it's one of the best horror films we've seen in a long time.
I agree. Roger and I both admire Volker Schlondorff's Circle of Deceit, a portrait of a questioning journalist in Lebanon who begins questioning himself. 2 yes votes for that. We split on The Kirlian Witness. Roger found it an amusing treatment of an intriguing premise. I only like the premise, not the treatment. And we agree on recommending the revival of Walt Disney's Fantasia, although I had some reservations about the soundtrack, and I'm not the biggest fan of some segments of the movie. And finally, we are in complete agreement on the worth of Diva, the stylish French opera thriller directed by Jean-Jacques Benex. It's one of the year's best movies.
To which I say, amen.
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 All right.
Okay, bravo.
Okay,
I
that's
agree.
a little bit
Great
better.
movie, Diva. Okay.
Our first film was Death Wish 2. Neither Roger or I could recommend that Charles Bronson revenge thriller about a citizen who goes berserk and kills muggers. It had some power, but it was so predictable, so 2 no votes for that. We also agreed on Gaijin, the story of Japanese farm labor being exploited in Brazil. Both Roger and I found the film to be a poignant social documentary telling the story that has been repeated in many societies all over the world. And another agreement on If You Could See What I Hear, the story of blind singer Tom Sullivan, who we both think is oppressively cheerful. 2 no votes for that one. And we're together on all 4 films this week, I guess. 2 surprising yes votes for Swamp Thing, the monster picture about a woman scientist protected by a human weeping willow. We thought it was fresh, goofy, and surprisingly good.
We split on The Sword and the Sorcerer, the colorful sword-fighting epic. We both thought it was a great-looking movie, but I thought the images overwhelmed the story, so Gene votes yes, but I vote no. And we both voted no on Partners, the lightweight, predictable comedy starring Ryan O'Neal and John Hurt as 2 undercover cops. We thought the movie didn't bring enough imagination to a promising situation. 2 yes votes for Christiane F, the heartbreakingly effective West German movie about drug addiction. We were both impressed by the uncompromising realism of the movie's portrait of teenagers gradually getting hooked on drugs. And 2 more yes votes for Conan the Barbarian, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sandahl Bergman as mythical heroes from beyond the mists of time. We thought the movie's production and special effects looked great and did justice to the Conan legend. We both vote no for Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid, the movie where Steve Martin plays a private eye in scenes lifted from old crime movies. The movie has a few funny moments, but once we get the basic idea, it just repeats itself. 2 more no votes on Rocky III, the 3rd chapter in Sylvester Stallone's saga of Rocky Balboa. The film is exciting and moves well, I thought, but instead of telling us more about Rocky the person, it's basically just a formula remake. We split on Poltergeist, the thriller about a suburban family's haunted house. Gene thought it was predictable and not scary. He votes no. I like the special effects. I wasn't intimidated by them. And I like the portrait of a family under fire. I vote yes. But we both agree on one thing, despite the PG rating, that this film is too extreme for younger children. Finally, 2 big yes votes for E.T., the Extraterrestrial, Steven Spielberg's enchanting fantasy about a friendship between a little boy and a creature from outer space. This is one of the best films of recent years. A wonderful entertainment for all ages. We recommend it with a lot of enthusiasm.
Well, both Roger and I thought Hanky Panky with Gene Wilder and Gilda Radner was a cute screwball comedy. 2 yes votes for that, meaning yes, we both can recommend you see it. On Annie, strange reviews. Roger found the movie brainless but fun. I like Albert Finney in the movie a lot, but I thought the film looked bad and that Annie was a bore. So 2 grudging, reluctant yes votes for Annie. And 2 strong yes votes for Star Trek II, the latest adventure of the Starship Enterprise. This one is much better than the first Star Trek movie. And 2 no votes for Grease 2, the lame sequel that has no memorable songs and no stars equal to Olivia Newton-John and John Travolta. I like the new one a little bit more than Roger, but still, 2 no votes nonetheless.
So, Star Trek II and Hanky
Yes.
Panky, yes, right?
Right.
We both voted no on Author, the new Al Pacino movie. We thought it was a phony, contrived exercise, recycled Kramer versus Kramer. We had a lot of admiration, though, for Burden of Dreams, Les Blank's spellbinding documentary about German director Werner Herzog's obsessive scheme to drag a steamship up a hill and make a movie about it. 2 big yes votes for that one. 2 more yes votes for A Week's Vacation, the sensitive, perceptive film about a French school teacher who is suddenly filled with doubts about her life, her relationships, and her profession. But we split on Firefox, the new Clint Eastwood thriller. Gene reluctantly voted no. He thought the movie took too long to get to its exciting conclusion. But I vote yes. I thought this was a well-crafted, exciting thriller with some superior special effects.
Roger and I didn't like Megaforce, the Soldier of Fortune adventure comedy, a meandering plot and a wimpy leader. 2 no votes for that. 2 yes votes, though, for The Atomic Cafe, a documentary on America's reaction in the 50s to the birth of the nuclear age. We both found the film to be a better curio than a piece of movie making, but an entertaining curio nonetheless, so 2 yes votes for that. Our strongest support, however, was for The Weavers, Wasn't That a Time, a very special documentary of the recent reunion of the popular 50s folk song group. We both loved that picture. And we split on The Thing. Roger, as you can remember, was appalled by the monsters in the film. He calls it a geek show. I didn't enjoy looking at the monsters either, but I did find it to be an interesting element in the movie, the element of suspicion of something rotten in one's fellow man. So a reluctant, but yes vote for mine.
We agreed on The Secret of Nim, the animated fantasy about intelligent rats. 2 yes votes, especially for the skillful animation. And 2 more yes votes for The Devil's Playground, the story of the pressures and relationships inside an Australian seminary in the early 1950s. From Scotland, Gregory's Girl told the story of a young man's unrequited love for a girl who can play soccer better than he can. I like the movie's affectionate portrayal of teenage insecurity, and Gene also voted yes, although he felt the film bordered on being a little too cute. Finally, 2 very enthusiastic big yes votes for Tron, the dazzling new fantasy film from Walt Disney, which uses human actors and brilliant new animation techniques to take its characters inside the circuits of a computer universe. So, well, Tron's the big one, right?
Yeah, Tron's the big one. Both Roger and I agree that Young Doctors in Love is a weak attempt at parody, just too few laughs, 2 no votes for that one. However, we both admired Eric Romer's The Aviator's Wife, a brittle French comedy of relationships, 2 yes votes for that. And we agree that Woody Allen's A Midsummer Night's Sex Comedy is mildly amusing, but not much more, and we expect more from Woody Allen. And finally, we both like George Roy Hill's film of John Irving's novel, The World According to Garp with Robin Williams, describing the full arc of a crazy life. 2 yes votes for Garp on film, a fine adaptation. We both vote no on Night Shift, starring Henry Winkler as a morgue attendant who runs a call girl operation on the side. We like some of the movie's performances more than the plot, which was an endless parade of sitcom cliches. 2 big yes votes, though, for Smash Palace, Roger Donaldson's New Zealand film about a retired Grand Prix driver who fights for possession of his daughter. This is a wonderful portrait of a man whose heart is in turmoil. 2 yes votes for Chica da Silva, the lively and offbeat new film from Brazil about a slave who rules the heart of a colonial administrator. Zizi Mata gives an inspired and uninhibited performance as Chica, the seductive slave. and 2 more enthusiastic guest votes for An Officer and a Gentleman, one of the most provocative and heartbreaking American love stories in a long time. The movie centers around the utterly convincing performances of Richard Gere, Deborah Winger, and Lou Gossett. Both Roger and I enjoyed The Road Warrior, George Miller's futuristic fantasy, a journey into violence, the likes of which you've probably never seen before. We split somewhat on Sisters, Marguerite von Trotte's German investigation of an obsessive personality. Roger admired it for its thought-provoking qualities and observations about human nature. I found the film less satisfying and not particularly original, so a split vote for Sisters. We were back in agreement, though, on The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, the disappointing musical with Burt Reynolds and Dolly Parton. Not much of a relationship between them in this picture, just a lot of vulgar hee-haw jokes. And we both really admired Barbarossa, Fred Skepsi's Western saga with Willie Nelson and Gary Busey, and the story of a grudge that would not die. 2 big yes votes for Barbarossa, and we are both glad to see it back in the theaters.
And that's all for this week. Next time, our show looks back at the trend toward movies aimed at teenagers with scenes from last summer's successful sequel, Superman 2, the teenage love story Endless Love, and the rousing adventure film Raiders of the Lost Ark. And until then, we'll see you at the movies.
Funding for sneak previews was provided by this station and by other public television stations.